Hello, my name is Dwayne Osterland, and I want to welcome you to Addiction in the Mind. I have a special guest with us today. Her name's Amanda Chinchilla. She's a licensed marriage and family therapist and works at Novus Mindful Life Institute. And one of her specialties is working with the partners of sex addicts. So today, that's going to be our topic. We're gonna talk a lot about that. What brings partners into treatment, some of the outcomes, what they kind of go through, how they get better. And so I think it's going to be a very, very exciting topic. So here is Amanda, and I'll let her tell you a little bit about herself.
Well, thank you for having me on today, Dwayne. I'm here to talk about partners because historically it's been a population that has been undertreated and underserved when we're dealing with sex addiction.
Yeah, that's been definitely true. I think the history with addiction treatment is the addict kind of got all the attention, got all the focus of treatment, all the focus of care, and the partner was really left out.
Yes.
And definitely with sex addiction, I think that brings up even more issues of betrayal and hurt and stuff like that. So.
Definitely, in isolation. When you're dealing with alcoholism or drug addiction, people understand that. People are more willing to talk about it. They're not judged in the same way that if a partner comes out to her family or to friends and says, my husband or my partner is a sex addict, then very often they are judged. People will scare them immediately and tell them to leave, tell them they need to be worried about many different things. So very often partners stay silent.
Right. And with sex addiction, especially in our culture, anything about sex is kind of scary. Taboo. No one wants to talk about it. And so a partner of a sex addict really is in a really tough position because not only do they have a huge betrayal sometimes, because the sex addict most of the time is living in a secret life, a double life. A lot of it's hidden, even from the partner. And so when the partner discovers it, or the whole system starts to break down, then they're really left in a tough spot because where do they go? Where do they get help? And that becomes really, really difficult for them. So. Tell me a little bit about, when partners what brings them into treatment?
Generally, we see two different scenarios happening, although there can be more, but generally people will come in after a discovery and not knowing that there were years of behaviors that had been occurring. That could include something like finding an email, finding porn sites, discovering they have an STD,
right?
An arrest. There can be all of these different things that happen where the partner had no idea anything was going on.
So this is for this partner, it's like completely out of the blue.
Completely out of the blue. And these partners often present in a trauma reaction, so identical to someone presenting with post-traumatic stress disorder symptoms.
Okay, so they're going along in their life, and the addict is having this secret life, and they find out through one of these events, an email, they find an email or a text, or they go to the doctor, and the doctor says, you have this STD, and they really were in the dark.
Yes.
And so when clients have come in and I've met with partners, a lot of times there's just a lot of shock.
Yes,
it's like their world is completely like, I was living this life, and then it's not this life anymore. It's another life, and I didn't know anything about it. And it's definitely, and it's terrifying. They're in shock, and right. So
and so they're coming in with a lot of anxiety, depression. They don't know who they can trust anymore. Right. They've trusted their partner for however many years, and now they don't even know what's up from down. Right. If that makes sense.
No, yeah, definitely. Okay. I've definitely seen that. And so then the other partners are the partners, the two main kind of scenarios, like you said, there are others, but these kind of fall into these two themes, are the partners that have known for a long period of time.
Yes.
And what brings them into treatment?
Different things. A lot of women that I'm working with who've known for, 5, 10, up to 20 years that something is going on. They might not know the extent of the behaviors, but they know they're being lied to on some level. They know there are things happening outside of the marriage. Sometimes it's a major life event, like their children going off to college, or a child discovering porn, or hearing a phone conversation.
Right.
It could be, again, an arrest or discovering of an STD and realizing, wow, this is a bigger issue than I had kind of pretended it was. Kind of,
Okay.
it's a way to protect themselves, to kind of not really look at how big the issue actually is.
So in a way, for those partners who have known for a long time, they've kind of kept it out of...
Yeah, there's nobody... it's not like alcoholism where everybody in the world can see what's happening. So if you're with an alcoholic husband, everybody knows he's an alcoholic and can offer that support. Sex addiction is very private. Nobody really necessarily sees anything happening.
So they really are alone in that
They're
situation.
alone. They feel alone.
Yeah, they don't know where to reach out, and they don't know how to...
And it's embarrassing. It's shameful for many of these, all of these partners to know that these behaviors are happening and not wanting to reach out to family or friends and talk about it.
And I'd like to add, it's a lot of times it's the partners that kind of get to this breaking point.
Yes.
That sometimes when the addict is in a relationship, it's what pushes the addict into treatment is the partner has reached some kind of... Either there's this dramatic discovery when they didn't know and it's all out there, or there's finally the partner has some kind of limit that's broken, and they go, you have to go get help, or I'm out of here.
Sometimes
done.
the partner has already started her own individual therapy or has started attending 12-step support groups on her own when she realizes and has done research on her own that, this is a sex addiction. And sometimes that's kind of what pushes people into making that first step.
Yeah, definitely. And so when they... So then they finally make the call, or they get help and they come in.
Yes.
What happens at that point for the partner?
For the partner, it's extremely important that the first step that happens is that their experience is validated.
Okay.
They need to know that what's happening is real, that they have been lied to, that they have been manipulated, and that they're not crazy, that their emotions make sense.
I think that's, in my experience in working with this population, to really see the look on a partner's face when their experience is actually validated, to say, you're not crazy, this is happening, and your pain and hurt around this is actually real. Like this is traumatic for you.
Yes.
The response I get so many times is partners just breaking down and saying, thank you for just validating, just telling me that my pain is actually real.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I think with every single partner, one of the things I say is, you are not crazy. And that usually just this load gets released from them. To hear that they're not crazy. Because very often their partners have been telling them they're crazy, that they're paranoid, that they're jealous.
Right.
So they've started to believe, many of them, that these things are true, that it's their problem.
Right. And I wanted to say that because sex addiction is this addiction that's kind of in the dark, it's hidden, it's very secretive, that the addict has worked to create that world of secrecy and minimizes what they experience. I mean, I've heard stories where, it's kind of called gaslighting, where or crazy making, where the partner looks and there's porn on the computer, and later on the addict goes, no, you didn't see porn. That was no. I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Are you making that up? You must be making that up. And then eventually, sometimes the partners are like, well, maybe I didn't see that. Maybe it wasn't what I thought it was, and so they start to doubt their own experience, and that alone is traumatic. Yeah. And if that's been going on for years, it becomes to have their experience validated is like such a key point. So
to validate the experience and to let them know that the symptoms that they're feeling make sense for what they've been through.
Right, exactly. And And sometimes this is really the hardest step for them is to do this of getting help.
Well, to verbalize it out loud to somebody that these things are actually happening makes it real.
Yeah.
And once that step has happened, they have to deal with it.
Yeah, and I think that becomes a really hard part for them, because
Absolutely.
then they have to face it and start just making decisions around it. They can't, definitely this is for the partner is known for a long period of time.
Yes.
I mean, it's a little different for the partner that didn't know anything and discovers it. A lot of times they're just in shock.
Absolutely.
They're just like, this can't be happening, and we've got to fix it really fast, and we've got to repair it and get back to where we were in this, which, as they discover and time goes on, that's actually not true, but
or where they want to be.
Or where they want to be, yeah. So okay. Well, this is the first part. I think in the second part, we're gonna go through a little bit of what the beginning phases of treatment and care for the partner is in the next part. So stay tuned, and we'll see you back in a second.
My name is Dr. Saggart. I'm a board-certified psychiatrist. I can provide medication management, psychotherapy, either individually or in group setting, and also I provide couple therapy. I have experience working with severely mentally ill patients, as well as substance abusers and highly functioning people. My website address is www.drsaggart.com.
Welcome back to Addiction in the Mind. And in the first part, we talked about partners and of sex addicts and what usually brings them in, and what they're presenting with and what they're kind of going through in the initial phases of discovery. What we're going to talk about in this part is we're just going to talk about the first stages of treatment and care for the partner of a sex addict and what they need to do. So Amanda, you want to take that? When they come in and they're, they finally, I mean, definitely the very first thing we do is validate them, just validate their experience. But once they're there, they're willing to come in for the second session or a few more sessions. What are some of the first things that we want to do with them to help them?
One of the most important first steps is to get clients connected with support systems. Definitely individual therapy to have that intimate discussion, but to also join maybe a process group or a 12-step support group.
So getting them with other people, building that support, because a lot of times they've been by themselves in this. They've no one knows about it. It's secretive. It's hidden. It's shameful. There's a lot of embarrassment. So they have no support whatsoever.
They have no support, and we do have to be realistic with these women. I don't want them to stay isolated and quiet during this process, but I want them to be aware of who they're sharing information with also.
Right.
Not everybody in their family is going to be a safe person to talk to. They may decide after treatment that they want to remain in the marriage. Very often that is what happens.
Right. And there's a lot of judgment around sex addiction.
There's a lot of judgment, and people don't understand it. And so in the beginning of treatment, it's important to be around a group of women who understand.
So like a safe support group.
A safe support group. Absolutely.
Right. And that can be like a 12-step. What are some of the 12-step? We have COSA, yeah. Essanon, yeah. Those are some good 12-step groups that they can start meeting other people who have
some
gone
people
through
who
this.
are even uncomfortable with that will start attending Al-Anon meetings first, just to kind of step into the process and kind of not commit to the sex addiction label.
Sure, because that's pretty scary. And then there are process groups. A lot of like our agency has groups specifically for partners.
Yes.
That's led by a therapist, so they can start to build that support network in a very safe therapeutic environment. And some partners, I think, feel a little safer doing that first before venturing out to a 12-step group. But,
yes.
Because they know the therapist, they'll feel like they're in a contained environment. No one's going to know.
Yeah.
And so definitely. So getting support is definitely the first thing.
Getting support is the first step. At the same time, partners really need to learn about boundaries and what that means and what those are.
Okay.
Because what we see in partners is that very often they grew up in families where boundaries were either non-existent,
right,
or very strict. And so we need to educate clients on what that means and why they're important.
Right, and then if they're with an addict, being able to set boundaries, that becomes very difficult. But just
extremely difficult.
Getting that that concept down, to understand that, to have clarity.
Yeah, because many of these partners feel like when I'm asking them to set a boundary, that I'm asking them to control their partner's behavior, and that is absolutely not what we're trying to do. It's about protecting themselves during this process.
Right, and for a lot of them, they haven't had that at all. Because the addict has been engaging in this behavior and they've had no idea, or they don't know the extent of it, and so they've not.
Yeah, or even know that they have the right to ask things from their spouse or partner.
Okay, so setting boundaries, getting support. What would be some other things that a partner can do?
Well, definitely looking at her own self-care. Very often that is, his or her self-care.
Right.
We want to validate also that men can be partners within any relationship, heterosexual, homosexual.
Right. I think that's really an important point to make, that usually when we talk about this, we talk about the partners as women and the addicts as men. That seems to be the majority, but that's not everything, and we have to definitely acknowledge that this goes across definitely acknowledge that, and both men and women can be partners, and in a gay or straight relationship, and I think that's really important to acknowledge that. So
it's important for these women to also start educating themselves on sex addiction and what that means.
Right.
So there are books that we recommend initially. So Mending a Shattered Heart by Stephanie Carnes.
Yeah, that's a great book. That's definitely a good start. It can be a little overwhelming, but it's definitely it has it answers a lot of their questions.
It answers a lot of questions, and it can bring up a lot of fears that were non-existent. So it's important to also have support when reading those books. And
there's another good book. It's called Facing Heartbreak by Mari Lee. That's a workbook, and sometimes that's good to do with a therapist.
Definitely.
But it's a good starting place for them, because I think even in the first few chapters it talks about that, setting boundaries.
The first, I believe it's the second chapter. It's talking about what boundaries are.
Right.
Emotional, psychological, sexual boundaries, physical boundaries, financial boundaries.
Right. And it helps them start to start to contain their world and create some safety for themselves.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and within that safety, as we get back to self-care, these women need to start, women or men, need to start taking care of themselves, basic needs that have gone unmet.
Yeah, I think, what I've seen a lot for the partners of sex addicts is once again, it breaks into those two categories: the ones that didn't know anything at all and really were just knocked to the ground, and somehow that's a little bit different. But to the partners that had an inkling or an idea, they've had so much of their life focused on the addict, like checking up on the addict, investigating, snooping, getting on the computer and trying to find the history, or following the addict, or putting spyware on the addict's computer to find out are they having a relationship, or are they what are they doing, and so much of their life has been focused on the addict that a lot of their life they've done no focus on themselves.
No, because they've become the policeman, the mother, they take on all these other roles for their partners, which they don't want to be holding.
Right, definitely, and And so when, as they start this journey, as they start to turn the focus on themselves, in a way that actually becomes scary in and of itself, because now they have to look at their own needs. They have to acknowledge that they might have to set some boundaries that will be difficult, that the addict might not like. And what I've also found with partners is that, it's almost like they feel like they have to control the addict's behavior, like they have to be on the best behavior. They better be sexual enough, good looking enough, to be able to keep their partner from acting out. Yeah. And that becomes to
sexual
let go.
enough, good looking enough. They can never be angry. They can't question too much. Very often they're kept in the dark with financial information.
Right. So the setting of boundaries starts to get them to own their experience and that they have some say in their life.
Yes.
In a way.
It's an extremely difficult thing to do. And we need to validate that. It's not easy. I'm not asking them to go home and set a bunch of boundaries and expect that it's going to be an easy thing for them to do.
Yeah, well, it's really scary because if they set these boundaries, what is the addict going to do? Is the addict going to run out and start acting out again? I got to keep the addict in check. I got to keep everything, going good so that he doesn't do this or she doesn't do that. And in a way, it's almost like they lose themselves in that process of trying to keep the addict healthy.
Absolutely.
If that makes sense.
It's a false sense of control, right? What they're really not doing is expressing their emotions or their needs or their concerns.
Yeah, so a big part of this is them letting go of the outcome of setting those boundaries and, having those consequences to their boundaries and, letting the addict go get the help that the addict needs. And sometimes when partners actually do that, it does force the addict to reevaluate, and sometimes that pushes the addict into some kind of treatment. But they have to do it because it's good for them.
Definitely.
Yeah, definitely. And another thing I wanted to talk about with partners is, we talked a little bit about getting that support network, but I think it's really important to talk about, this disclosure process, to other people. And then we'll also actually talk about disclosure, getting within the relationship. But I just wanted to bring up that topic because a lot of times what I see a lot is as they go through the process, they may get angry, frustrated, and they're telling a lot of people that maybe shouldn't know at this point.
Yes.
And then the family knows and stuff like that. So I wanted to talk a little bit about that.
Well, when people hear sex addiction, their minds can go anywhere from, oh, your husband watches porn, or is he a pedophile? Is he a rapist? Is he a safe person?
Right.
So we need to make sure that our clients, our partners, protect themselves also within this. And again, a big issue in that is if they decide to stay in the relationship, the judgment they may receive and the pressure they may receive from other people once that information is out, and if the people they're telling do not understand what sex addiction is. Right.
So definitely just reiterating that, because I think that's one of the big things that we find is that the difficulty that is caused because all of this information is out to people that maybe don't need to know, family members that don't need that much detail. And
it could affect people's professions, depending on what the profession is. It could affect their experience in the churches that they're attending. So it is important to have some containment on that disclosure in the beginning.
Right, so that it's safe and it's balanced. The other part, talking about disclosure, when we talk about disclosure, it's disclosure between the addict and the partner. And a lot of times the partner has been so in the dark and they're trying to figure out what their reality is. They want all the information. They want everything, to know everything about what the addict's done. Details. And this is a hard part, I think, for partners to understand, is that there might be a good balance in not knowing everything, but knowing the critical stuff so that you can make a decision to stay in the relationship or leave the relationship.
Partners I've worked with
Right.
that have been in treatment for longer express to me very often that they wish they hadn't have asked so many questions and details in the beginning.
Yeah.
Because what it does is it increases the number of triggers they're going to have throughout the process. So
Right.
sometimes they ask, what did this person look like, or what were the exact sites, or where did you go?
Yeah.
And then what happens is when they're out in the world, they're constantly triggered by all of these details that are in their head.
Right.
And so there are some things that they need to know for safety and health.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really hard in the beginning because we want them to trust us we will take care of that for them. And we will make sure
Right.
that during the process they find out the things they need to know.
Yeah, and what also happens a lot too is that, you know, the addict has all these secrets, has been living this double life, and they do what happens is like a staggered disclosure. So the addict says a little bit, but doesn't say everything because they don't want to upset their partner. And so they give a little bit of information, and then a week later they give a little bit more information, and then a week
in
later.
some ways the partners think that is helpful for them because
Right.
my partner's being honest with me, but at the same time it's putting him into a trauma reaction over and over.
Right.
So that's one of the boundaries, the listening boundaries that we set with partners, that they don't have to listen to a disclosure.
Right, and that you know, in the beginning for the addict, if the addict's in recovery, you know, the addict has to have the time to sort out all of these secrets because a lot of times the addict doesn't even remember. The partner might remember something they found, and the addict at this point has forgotten that even happened.
Yeah.
So then the addict doesn't disclose that, and the partner feels like, I don't know if I should trust him or not, or I don't know what the truth is.
It's a betrayal all over
It's
again.
a betrayal all over again. So one of the things is the beginning is to just stop that process and do a disclosure in a more formal way, so that they can do it in a healthy way. And then this gives the partner the opportunity to make a decision, an informed decision, to stay in the relationship or leave. And obviously this takes the addict has to be in a certain level of recovery.
Yes.
If the addict's not in a recovery, that's a different kind of issue. So yeah. So I'm going to end this section right here. And what we're going to do is just talk in the next session. What we're going to do is we're going to talk about a little bit of longer term outlooks for partners of sex addicts and relationships in the long term. So I thank you for watching, and in the next section, that's where we're going to pick up. So thank you.
Welcome to Elements Therapeutic Massage at the Gateway Center. We offer a therapeutic massage, which is where we combine the different massage modalities. This is to create a customized experience designed to address your specific needs. Everyone here at Elements believes in the health benefits of a regular massage regimen. That's why we offer a flexible, affordable, non-binding wellness program that you can even share with someone you care about. We're open 7 days a week, so give us a call and book an appointment or visit us at our website. Thank you, and expect more from your massage.
Hello, I'm Dwayne Osterlin, and welcome to Addiction in the Mind. And this is the next part in the series of partners and sex addiction. And in this part, you know, in the first two parts, we talked about what brings a partner into treatment, the first phases of treatment, how they get into treatment. And in the second part, we talked about the beginning phases of treatment that they're going through. And now we're going to talk a little bit about the longer term part of treatment for a partner of a sex addict and what they're going through. And at this point, we're looking at partners that have been in their own recovery, maybe 6 months to a year and a half. And so they've done the initial part of recovery. They've decided to stay in the relationship, most likely, not always, but sometimes. And then and they've done some of their own work. The addicts, hopefully, in their own recovery at this point. They have a support network set up. Maybe they've been through a disclosure. They've they have a good therapy going. They're maybe a part of a group. And so this is where we're going to pick up right now. So I'll have Amanda talk a little bit about that.
So after disclosure and after a partner has really set strong boundaries and has a feeling of safety within the relationship and safety within the therapeutic relationship, we then really get into the family of origin trauma, and kind of what it was like for them as children, and kind of where did they learn these lack of boundaries, and where did that come from?
So looking at the underlying issues of why did they choose this relationship in the first place?
Yeah, why was this relationship the one that they ended up in? Why find a partner who maybe didn't have a lot of needs from them, or why they didn't have a lot of needs for their partner?
Right. So this moves into, first they started with all this containment, getting a support network, and now they're starting to turn that therapeutic lens towards themselves.
Yeah.
What are the deeper lying causes of why did I not set these boundaries? Why was I in this relationship? Stuff like that. So that's what we're...
Yeah, and what we see when we look back at with most of our partners is there was some type of an abandonment that happened in their childhood. So either emotional abandonment or physical abandonment, and kind of learning that they were kind of had to take care of themselves, that it wasn't safe to trust other people to take care of certain needs, certain emotional needs. And so they kind of developed this way of kind of controlling the environment, making sure everything's okay, but not really going with what they need, kind of taking care of everybody else's needs to keep a stable environment.
Yeah, definitely. And because one of the things that I find, and I'd like you to talk about a little bit, is that this is actually a hard transition for the partner in a way, is that, in the beginning of the therapy is all about the addict. What are they doing? How do I survive this? And then there's this kind of therapeutic transition where they begin to look at themselves. And can you talk about a little bit about that and how that takes place?
You have to be really gentle with clients throughout this process, because very often the label of codependency and co-act are going to come up, and in the past it felt very blaming to partners. In the beginning, therapists would actually say to them, well, what's your role? We need to look at your role in this right away, before the trauma was even validated. So we need to validate that for the clients before we go into that, and help them understand that this isn't a blaming
stance.
Our intent, is not to blame them, to say, okay, well, let's understand why you got in this relationship.
And so some of the reasons for that could be family of origin issues,
very often, abuse. Very often we find these women kind of leave an abusive relationship and end up in this relationship, and it's so much better than the other relationship that they were in, and the addiction is hidden, so they don't actually see what they're entering into. The underlying behaviors are the same. So they might have they might be okay dealing with the anger issues of their husband or partner, or they might be able to deal with not being emotionally connected because they don't know what that means anyhow. They've never experienced that. So they fall into this relationship thinking it's safer. Sometimes this is, we find partners, this is their third marriage, and their first two were with an alcoholic or someone dealing with a drug addiction, but they thought, okay, well, this is a safe one. And so kind of that, okay, I was third time, but this was a more secretive addiction.
And so they didn't really see it, but the underlying way in which they relate to their partner or the addict or the person they're in the relationship with has these underlying dynamics that they have to start to look at to understand themselves,
which always includes not being able to, or even knowing that you have the right to voice your needs and your emotions. So that's a huge part of therapy, is even recognizing, well, what are your needs within this relationship? It's not just that he doesn't act out. Your needs are, affection, companionship.
So they really have to get to this is why this is way later, because they have to definitely get to a stable spot to be able to start to look at those
and they have to begin
needs.
to trust their partner. over time to make themselves vulnerable to even share these needs.
Right. And that's a big, that, I guess even going back to the beginning, that's one of the questions we get all the time in the very beginning is how am I ever going to trust my partner again?
Yeah, because
I mean,
very
they
often
lied to me in such a deep way. How can I ever trust my partner again?
Yeah, and partners will say to me, well, I've asked him before not to do that, and he swore to me. He swore on the Bible. He swore on our children. And so what we need to make sure is that when we're asking them to express these needs, that they feel somewhat confident, or we feel somewhat confident, that their partner is no longer acting out and is actually engaged in recovery.
Yeah, and what I say to a lot of partners, I say there's a formula how trust is rebuilt, and it's time, a lot of time, and partners they have this urge to want to trust again right now,
Yes,
and they can't. So I say it's a lot of time, and it's consistent, noticeable, trustworthy actions that your partner displays to you.
Yes,
And that words don't really mean anything.
No,
You have to look at the actions, and that takes a lot for a partner to do. So if that's taking place and they're beginning to say, okay, I see that the addict is he's going to meetings, he's in therapy, I can see the changes in the way that he talks to me, he's owned up to slips, he's taken responsibility for his part.
Yeah.
I get to see the actions. Then, that sets the stage for the partner to be able to say, okay, I'm going to risk trusting. I'm going to take that risk because his actions are telling me that, hey, he's really working on changing. And I think that's a really important part. So, yeah, definitely, because if they can't, it has to be safe for them to also do this work too. And if the addict is still not in any kind of recovery, it doesn't mean they have to leave the relationship, but they're probably going to have to do this work on their own in some capacity, without their partner's support, without the addict's support. So, yeah.
Yeah, and partners, when they come in, we do encourage them not to make any major decisions for at least a year. That doesn't mean that they can't live apart temporarily.
Yeah, that's true.
Because they may need that boundary, that space to do the work. But yeah, it's repeated behaviors over time, and that's why we do the disclosure, and we encourage, people to be as honest as they can, because every time there's a new disclosure or anything else that comes out, it's going to take the trust back to zero.
Right. Yeah, definitely. And I think as partners get into this transition where they're beginning to work on themselves, it also enables them to see where their boundaries need to be. And these are more subtle boundaries, emotional boundaries, talking boundaries. How are you going to talk to me? What are my needs, actually? Because a lot of them come from, like you said, abuse and neglect, where their needs weren't met in healthy ways. So they don't even know a lot of times what their needs are. Yeah. And so they're, this is that really hard self-discovery work, but it definitely comes later after this trauma phase has subsided, and they have some stability and they have a support network.
Yeah, and to let them know they have a choice. They don't have to stay in this relationship. They don't have to leave the relationship. They can do what's going to meet their needs. Right.
And what about longer term, even longer than this? When we look at partners, several years out and dealing with this. I mean, how do they do, and what's the outcome? Well,
partners do very well. Addicts do very well. It just depends on level of commitment to recovery. The more I see these partners identifying their needs and working on the ability to express it to others and to realize that they can have consequences, and that's okay. They have the right to say, if this continues to happen, I'm going to leave the relationship, or that's the extreme one. But you just see these women empowering themselves and happier across all areas of their lives. Some women, a lot of women, look into going back to school or looking into their passions, their hobbies that have kind of just gone completely unlooked at. For years and years and years, because they were so busy kind of maintaining this system.
Definitely see that. And what also I think should be noted is what we see too is when the addict and the partner, they come into treatment together, and they're in very different spots, because for the addict, a lot of times coming into treatment is actually a relief.
Yes.
They don't want to get caught, but they're actually like, oh my goodness, there's actually help for me. I can actually get better. Because they want to, in a deep way, a lot of addicts want to stop. They know this is destroying their life.
Yeah.
So the addict kind of goes on this upswing.
They feel loved and
They
supported
feel loved
and
they're
not shamed.
Right. And they're like, oh my gosh, people can actually hear my story and they're not going to run away. So the addict starts to feel better almost right away, where for the partner, once again, they kind of go down and they're in a completely different spot. They're in two different zones, and so they have to kind of get treatment in those zones.
Absolutely.
And then, but when they get in recovery together, eventually that down the road, maybe in a year and a half, they begin to come back together.
Yes.
And they begin to actually help each other heal the deeper wounds, like you were saying, the childhood traumas. And they actually end up helping each other through that process. But that's if both people are really engaged in it.
And that's when the couples work really starts to take on a new direction.
Yeah. And so one of the things that's really important is that the partner wants couples therapy right away, and they want to get the relationship going. And definitely, you're right. It's really, couples work doesn't start until both of them have some solid recovery, and they can hear each other, and they can hear themselves and what their needs are, and then they really begin to help each other heal. And that's really neat to see. I've had the opportunity to see, work in this field long enough to be able to see relationships really thrive, even though when they come in, you would think that, oh my gosh, this is never going to work.
It can look hopeless in the beginning. That's a question that people very often ask me in this field is, do these couples have a chance? I mean, how can anybody forgive this? And what I tell people, and I tell them honestly, is that these couples are so much happier and more functional after going through this process. They get a chance to look at their own past and look at what led them into these behaviors, and they're thriving.
Yeah, I know, and that's what's really amazing is that they actually have the relationship that they've both wanted from the very beginning.
Yeah.
They didn't know how to do it.
Well, they didn't know what it looked like.
They didn't know what it looked like, and they didn't know how to do it. So there is definitely hope for couples to survive this.
Absolutely.
and thrive and have incredibly meaningful, close, intimate relationships that they never had before. And that's the exciting part of doing this work. It's thrilling to see that happen. So, is there anything else that you would like to add, or?
Just that there is hope. You will be happier. You can heal from all of these wounds and the shame. That you don't have to feel shame.
Right.
You just deserve to be free from this. And we see it every day.
That's awesome. So thank you very much for watching Addiction in the Mind, and I hope this was informative for you. And let us know in the comments, or also send us any questions. If you have any questions about addiction, send it our way, and we'll try and answer it and have a show on it, and get you the information that you want. So appreciate you watching, and thank you very much.
Thank you.